Sorry to interrupt your jam session, but welcome into another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, thank you for listening. Maybe you're outside grilling, maybe you're changing dirty diapers, or maybe you finally got a moment to sit back, relax, and enjoy your favorite podcast, or maybe you're mowing the lawn or weed whacking. I don't know what you're doing, but I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you listening. Super excited to be with you. Super excited to have Jeff here with me tonight. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Love that beat. Feeling good. Ready to jam with you.
Awesome, man. I'm excited. And speaking of that beat, all the intro beat and the closing beat are brought to you by the Podbeat app. Podbeat's a proud supporter of this podcast. Podbeat's a proud friend of mine. Super excited that we get to use their beats to open and close our podcast. So Podbeat will turn any podcast and any audiobook into a musical experience. Fantastic. Highly recommend. Can't talk enough good things about them. But without further ado, let me give the people a little bit about you, Jeff, a little bit about your platform. And then we'll kick it off here with my favorite question that I like to ask to start off the podcast. So to you and to most people in general, kids' music sucks. And it's just pandering to kids. Kids' music should respect kids' authentic perspectives, experience, interests, and also help them build creativity and confidence. Part of what you're out here trying to do. And many parents are more concentrated with their kids following the rules and status quo when they should be more concerned with helping their kids be more creative, which I could not agree with more. Creativity is huge. So you also have a background in children's psychology. You also do a ton of music stuff. You wear many hats, done many things, seen many things. So it's going to be a fantastic conversation that we have for the listener tonight. But this is a double-ended question, a double barrel shotgun kind of question to start us off here. What is a hill in both children's psychology and with children's music that you're willing to die on?
Love it. Yeah. So, my background, just a small correction. My background's in positive psychology. It's not specifically just specialized in children's psychology, but specialized in creativity and developing and igniting creativity in humans in general. But the hill I would die on is I mean, you kind of summed it up when the music is a lot of kids' music sucks. And it sucks for kids, I believe, and I think it sucks for parents. And I don't think it's, I understand where it's coming from, but it's not capturing the authentic experience of these little humans developing in the world and experiencing the world and finding joy and learning and going through different developmental milestones. It's a lot of it traditionally is some adults thing. I think kids should hear this and they need to learn this and they need to think like this and they probably like this little goofy thing here. But I got a little crazy listening to kids' music when my son was born, and I'm a musician, and I said, hey, this isn't capturing how cool and creative and fun my son is. I know he's not thinking these things in his brains. I got to do something about it. I got to flip it on his head and create something original. But so the hill I'll die on for music is, yeah, like most kids' music sucks. There's a lot of new kids musicians and bands that are doing some cool stuff and creative things that I like, but yeah, it's a little nuts out there. And then the other hill, what was the other hill you asked me about?
When it comes within psychology, what's a hill in psychology that you're willing to die on?
Yeah, the hill I'm willing to die on, probably nothing too surprising based on the intro or the topic here is I think creativity is the number one skill and mindset and orientation that we all should be developing. Children, parents, adults, whoever. I think this is the most important skill and orientation towards life that is out there. Not necessarily following the rules or responsibility or discipline or willpower, but I believe it's creativity.
I love that. And those are so important, right? So when it comes for you, how did all of this come into fruition with your psychology background, with the music? How, I guess, take us into your education, your background, and your insights on these topics here.
Yeah, so I grew up, I've always been a creative kid. I was always into music, was very interested and curious about a lot of different things. I grew up doing a lot of different activities and getting involved in sports and music and art and just whatever. Like I was interested in a lot of stuff. My main creative strengths and talents when I was growing up were in music, specifically guitar. It really captured my attention when I was around 11. My dad was in bands and always playing guitar, in front of me, and so I wanted to do that too. There was so much cool music that I was hearing from his vinyl records every weekend, and I wanted to. I thought it was so cool. I wanted to play the song. I wanted to have that guitar, and I just fell in love with the guitar and just wanted to learn more and more about it, get better at it as much as I could. And I got into a lot of different bands, and I found out very quickly that I loved being in a rock band. I loved being in a jazz band. I loved playing country music. I loved playing hip hop. I loved blues and funk and just everything. I was just trying to absorb all these different diverse styles and genres and combine it in unique ways. And then eventually I started creating my own songs and playing in our own original bands where we were writing music. And it was so much fun in just creating and thinking of new ideas that were exciting. It's especially fun to collaborate with other musicians and friends and hang out and make songs and just have fun and enjoy each other's company, and then perform those songs for our other friends that would come to watch our shows. And it was just something that I grew up doing. And because of this, like, I wanted to be the best guitar player I could, right? Like I wanted to just develop my skills. I wanted to find that edge. And so I got really into the psychology of things like mindfulness and hypnosis and NLP and just anything and just anything I could do to kind of get in that creative flow state faster. I was interested in figuring out how to do that and build my confidence and not get nervous on stage and just kind of unleash the most badass guitar solos that I could, right? And so that's how I got into psychology. And then yada, yada, yada. My bands didn't work out. And it was really frustrating because we had the talent, right? Individually, we were all very skilled. Together, we were even better. And we were very unique and original. But the dynamics, the leadership, the collaboration, the teamwork, the interactions were off. It didn't work out. And so it got me into another area of the psychology, like organizational psychology, leadership, teams psychology. And I was just trying to figure out what happened and like, how could I get this creative state back? I was in this really horrible sales job at the time out in Dallas, Texas. I was depressed. I was burnt out. I was sick. And I had my favorite book, Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And I was just looking for an answer. And I saw in the end of the book, like about the author, that he had this positive psychology program outside of Los Angeles at Claremont Graduate University. And I didn't know exactly why, but I knew I needed to get out there and study under him. He was my favorite author. He'd written a ton about creativity and like what it means to live a meaningful life, a good life, to be engaged, to experience flow. And I just knew that's where I needed to be. Got out there into that program. That led me into getting into like some different leadership coaching and coaching with creatives and different entrepreneurs and founders. Yeah, just like music kind of piqued my interest in creativity. And then I got to study the psychology of creativity and how to be an effective leader, to bring that out in your teams, how to be a good teammate and collaborate effectively for creativity, and like how to create organizational workplaces that foster people's creativity as well. And so all this stuff just kind of led me into doing what I'm doing now. And the trigger event for the kids music stuff was when my son was born, right? Like I kind of dipped out of music, became more and more of a hobby, and then just like barely a hobby. And when he was born, I just kind of woke up like, oh my gosh, like here's this thing that I've always said is so important to me, but I'm just letting it slip. Like I got to step up and bring this back into my life somehow and be a good role model to show that, I truly do value creativity. I'm doing it. I'm making something. I'm having fun. I'm pursuing it. Even if no one's asking me to do it, I'm doing it. And, I'm persevering through the ups and downs of making it happen, and I'm committed to it. And so, yeah, so like I'm making music these days. I'm coaching, and creativity is at the core of all that all of,
That's very cool. All of that's so you really, it sounds like, value the usefulness of psychology to mix it in with music to help your music and your passion better, to get into a state of understanding the why. Like, why can people get into this flow state better? How can I get into that
Mhm.
flow state better? And really to dive into it deeper. And that's a great book you mentioned, by the way. Highly recommend to our listeners, if they haven't read that book, picked it up before. Highly recommend that book. It's a really good book.
Yeah,
Uh, and so it's very interesting that your field of psychology is very different, and your purpose behind psychology is very different from mine. I have my master's in developmental psychology, and
nice.
so with my background, I just have focused on like the development of like youth and children and adolescence and adulthood and whatnot, the different developmental stages, the different theories behind it, all the ethics and whatnot of psychology and things like that, mixing roles, all the boring logistical stuff of psychology. But that's my field of psychology, is looking at how children develop and then the typical developments and whatnot behind that. So very interesting that yours is to improve your music, and was to improve your music originally, and then it's led you down
Yeah,
this whole other path of how people think and how to apply that into being a good teammate, a good team player, a good leader of teams, and coach, and all these other areas. So this psychology is great in that way, where it
yeah.
leads you to so many different directions. It can lead you down so many different paths. It can lead you down 5 different paths to get to one common goal, which is really cool. So music is something that's great. I love music. Back on episode, I don't even remember, 140 something. I had the creators of the Podbeat app on one episode, and then followed the next episode, followed that with a guest interview that I had with Country Music Dad's podcast.
Oh,
And so
cool.
just diving into beats and how they can power and fuel your brain. And then additionally, how there's like a 3 minute rhythm cycle with Podbeat. And that's why they do all their beats in 3 minute cycles, because there's something with the brain that it needs that, and all that fun stuff. I don't understand it. Not my field, not my path. And then dove into country music and how that expresses all the emotions and whatnot. So it's incredible.
So cool.
And so, I mean, I'm trying to phrase this and think of how to phrase this. How can you continue to spark or ignite that creativity? Like, what are some of the do's and the don'ts of sparking one's creativity?
Like for yourself?
Like, for not for myself in particular, but just kind of generally speaking, what have you found are
Yeah,
some of those do's and don'ts that our listeners can know when it comes to sparking or igniting their own creativity?
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a really important thing to reflect on as a dad, as a parent. 'Cause a lot of times, it's easy as an adult in general, but especially when you're a new parent, to kind of let your creativity slide, to kind of sacrifice a lot of the things that you enjoy or energize you. And it's very normal, but I think it's really important to embrace as a dad, just so you can be that creative role model, but also so you can refill your own cup and get energized, and show up as the best dad person you can be to your kids and to your family. But a few things you would want to do, like one is, and this is the same for kids as well, like reflect on your strengths, like, and curiosity. So what are those things that you just naturally and interesting, that you want to learn more about, even if it's something really weird or unusual. We all have something that's like, oh, that's really cool, I want to learn a little bit more about that, I want to watch, a YouTube clip on that, or I want to do some research and go down this rabbit hole and learn more about this or that. Curiosities are like the pathway to creativity, to identifying those kind of latent talents that we all have. And there's usually something that will capture your attention more than others. So pay attention to what you're gravitating towards and you're finding interesting and you want to learn more about. That's usually a very strong clue for a creative avenue to pursue. So that's one. Two is, along the lines of the strengths, like for whatever reasons, like we all have different strengths and sets of strengths. I'd recommend taking some kind of strengths assessment, like the I think it's called Clifton Strengths now. It used to be called the Gallup Strengths Finder. Or there's a free one that's a positive psychology one called the Values in Action, VIA. It's a strength survey that you can take, and it tells you like your top 5 strengths. And what a strength is like, it's something like not only that you're good at, you have a natural proclivity towards, but it energizes you, it engages you. When you're doing it, you feel more alive, more fulfilled, like you're doing something on purpose, something you're passionate about. And usually those lead to bringing more creativity in your life. And so creativity to me isn't just like doing art or doing music or doing sculptures or whatever, writing a book. It's expressing your authentic you, right? Like it's a combination of your values, your personality, your strengths, your curiosities, just you. Like it's an authentic expression of that. It's like, what do you want to do? Not like what you should do or what you feel like you have to do, or what other peoples are telling you, do this or do that. But there's something I think inside of all of us, like if we can pay attention and reflect on it, there's something in there, like starting a podcast or doing kids music or writing a book or launching a side hustle or a business. There's some kind of itch I think we all have that we really want to do. And we keep thinking about, oh, it'd be awesome to start that or do that. But, for whatever reasons, we may not pursue that or commit to it. But that's what we need to pay attention to and lean into that. And then correlated with that step is like, when you're starting off, like it's overwhelming, right? Like, like, oh my gosh, am I going to do this forever? How long is this going to take? I have to learn a whole bunch of new stuff. I've never done this before, right? You feel like a beginner, you feel incompetent, you feel like an imposter. So you got to break things down into really small milestones and pieces, right? Like if you're going to start a podcast, like I'd be interested to hear like how you started the podcast. Like, did you set out to record 500 episodes, or did you say, you know what, I'm going to start with a couple and see if I like it, and if I like it, I'll keep doing more? Like, what was your approach?
No, I appreciate that question. So just to recap on those 2 do's of yours. First, the reflection. To me, that sounds like a lot about finding your why, finding those things that drive you, that motivate you, that inspire you. And I love what you said about creativity. Creativity is not always just reading or writing a book, drawing a picture, making music, right? We think of those as like very common creative expression, but there's so many ways to creatively express ourselves. We can do it in poetry. My friend John Cannell, he did it in creating cookbooks and cooking in the kitchen with his kids and creating cookbooks. So John's great. Or my dude Steve Anderson did it by creating journals for dads. That was his passion. That was his creative expression, right? And so we see it in a lot of different ways, a lot of different forms, and there's a lot of different mediums to be able to put that out there. Your different forms of creative expression. And so I think that's something super important to know. Like everyone's creativity, maybe a dad's creativity is in, I don't know, doing roster builds in Madden. I don't know. Or like me, like I love getting the new Madden or love getting the new MLB The Show, and I love finding a roster, and I love just tearing it down to the nubs, rebuilding it, getting super creative with the players I bring in, I trade for, I sign, and going through that aspect and that, because it's challenging, it's fun. For some reason, I just love doing it. I get to play GM, I can create my own world, create my own team. Like it's so fun. I love NCAA 25, how you really get to create like your recruits and things like that, and make sure they're matches and like that. I love that engagement side of it. So that's something that I really enjoy as well. Additionally to the podcast. So the podcast, how it started out is, so I guess even more backstory to this backstory, which I've probably mentioned on the podcast in the past, but before this podcast existed, I had a previous podcast that I was doing called Ball Boy Talk, which was a sports podcast where I mostly talked about baseball and things like that. I did a blog associated with it. It was about baseball, the MLB, things like that. And I really loved doing it. And then I got way into it with buying like a t-shirt for every MLB team except the Astros and the Yankees, because boo. And I was just like really into it, really loved it. And then I got divorced. And so then I really lost that creative spark for a long time until this kind of came around about 2 years ago. So summer of 2022, it had been about a year since my divorce and everything. And so I was really trying to, get back into the creative side of things, get back into whether it be writing or making videos or things like that. Because I would get great engagement on TikTok, YouTube Shorts. It was so much fun creating this content and
Mm.
interacting with people and answering baseball questions, giving my takes and giving ridiculous takes and just getting unhinged at times as well with the podcast because I could do whatever I want. It was my podcast. It was Ball Boy Talk, the Unhinged Sports Podcast. So I would just get unhinged. I would get crazy. I would get insane about these different takes and whatnot. It was super fun. And then this podcast kind of came because my brother and I, at the time, my brother's now moved from being a co-host to doing different stuff with podcasts and whatnot and supporting me as well because the talking part just wasn't his thing, which is totally okay. We all, like you said, we all have our different strengths. He has his strengths in doing different parts of the podcast, and I have my strength in hosting the podcast and conducting an interview. And so podcast started with really no particular like premise or goal of like episode numbers or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
The goal really and always has been to provide. So I redefined the goal over time, but the goal as it is now is to help 1 million dads, whether that's through giving them a laugh or not dads, but dads, parents alike, or people, giving them information, a resource, a tool, a connection, a community, a laugh, good cry, whatever, something that they can relate to, something they can feel, something that they can enjoy and feel. And if I can make you do any of that while someone's listening to this podcast, that's another one in the win column. And so 1 million is the goal. Nowhere close to that right now, but we're well on the way. And so that's the premise behind it. So how the podcast started. It started with a blue snowball mic and a laptop camera and just kind of sitting down and doing it and making it up as we go kind of thing and trying to model after the great podcasts that, my brother and I really like, Rogan, PDB, or PBD, and just different podcasts that we really enjoy that we like listening to and whatnot. Because like that was our like role models kind of thing, right? That's who we aspire to be, the level we aspire to get to, where Spotify's paying us, myself, millions of dollars to do a podcast kind of thing. So that's the goal. Not the only goal, but the framework that we approach there. So that's how this is continuously sparked and whatnot. It's sparked through doing, different interviews with different people. No subjects off topic. I'll put any subject on the table at any time. You want to talk race and gender? Great, let's talk race and gender. You want to talk politics? Great, I got a platform coming out for that. That should be out as well. It's called Patriarchy Principles. I got a platform to talk politics, faith, religion, Bible. I got a platform just for that.
Nice.
Talk about that all day. I have a platform to talk about religion, race, things like that, biracial broadcast. My dad and I will chop it up with you. We'll get into all the different parts of race, gender, or race stereotype, ethnicity, culture, things like that. We'll chop it up over there with you. And then, of course, here on the Young Dad podcast, we'll chop it up about every other conversation that we need to have or can have and want to have. So it's great.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah. And that's exactly how you do it, right? Like you use the word spark a lot, and that's usually how these things start. Like you feel a spark, you kindle it, you just get going, right? Like you don't waste that spark. You start small, you learn along the way, even if your equipment's not the top grade or you don't have all the tools, like you just, and you redefine it. And what I really loved about how you're saying, like there's in my field of psychology, there's like different types of motivations, right? Like you want to impact 1 million dads. That's this notion of pro-social motivation. Like what impact do you want to make? So that's a huge source of creativity. And then mix it with just doing things you have fun with, that you're naturally just enjoy doing and would do even if you got paid or not, or if no one was listening. Like that's intrinsic motivation, right? Like just you want to do something, you have fun with it. And then, just like your strengths, like you obviously have talents and strengths and perspective on things you want to talk about and enjoy, and like combining that, like that trifecta, those different sources of motivations and your skills, like that's a great place for any dad, any parent to explore and really lean into. And it just has to be a spark, right? Like you have that itch. You have that spark. Everyone has some kind of spark in you right now, and like you can either let it die or you can just kind of kindle a little bit and explore, like test it out, right? Like you don't have to commit to 1,000 podcasts or 1 million dads impacted right away, but you might just say, hey, you know what? Let's do 5 episodes. Let's see if we like doing it, if anyone likes listening to it, and we can decide if we want to keep going or not. We can change things up, but we got to explore it. Otherwise, we're going to regret it, or we're
Mhm.
going to, miss out on something that could be fun and impactful. So like, that's a great story, what you shared, and just like, yeah, really highlights like what I'd definitely recommend. Like, just get that spark, get
100%.
started, keep it small, evolve as you go, increase the challenge as you go, redefine your goals. But you got to get going, right? Like, you don't want to waste that spark, whatever it is in you. Like, you got to go for it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's kind of like exactly what you said when you mentioned that it's those thoughts that you can't seem to get out of your head for whatever reason. That's how Patriarchy Principles was born. Because I knew I loved and I really enjoyed talking about politics. I love talking about faith. I love talking about the Bible. I love talking about my faith. I love talking about how it all relates to one another. And it was just an idea and a thought that I had in my head, had in my head, had in my head, had in my head, had in my head forever. And every time I would try to put it aside or not really do anything with it, an opportunity would come up to have a conversation about politics and whatnot with the guest. And then it was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, that was fun. It was really fun. Really enjoyed it. Really got into that one, but I'm gonna put this to the side again. And then it would creep up again, and then I would have another one, and I would put it to the side again, and whatnot. And now it's just a living, breathing thing, right? And so
Yeah, I
it's
love
that
that.
thing. You have to kindle those thoughts. You have to
Mm-hmm.
ride with those thoughts. Like I don't know how many times I've spent, thinking about a freaking video game like MLB the Show, and I'm like, man, I really want to rebuild the Miami Marlins from scratch. I think what I would do is I would trade this guy, this guy, this guy, shed the payroll, and go this direction with it. And then I go and do it. And I'm like, this is so fun. It was intoxicating. It was so much fun to do, and I just enjoyed it so thoroughly. And it can really be
Yeah.
anything for anyone. And so those things are important to kindle, to nurture, to develop, to grow. Whatever it
Mm-hmm.
may be, whatever it may look like, it's going to look different for you than it looks different for me, and it looks different for our listeners. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah. And one other thing you mentioned, like, it can be like it's about finding your why, but it also doesn't need to be that much pressure either, right? Like, some people will approach it that way, like, there's a clear why, or like, I have to do this, this is my purpose in life, whatever. But it can also just be like, find your why not. Like, why not me? Like, why not start a podcast? That sounds fun. Like, why not
yeah, that was a
write
lot of it
write a
too.
book? Just like, let's do it. Like, why not? Like, it could be a fun thing. If it evolves into something that's bigger and more like my purpose or mission in life, then that's awesome. But it can just be a fun thing that I do every week too, and that's great
Yeah.
too. And I think that's important to have as well.
Yeah, no, that's a huge part of it too. Like it doesn't always have to be something that you plan to, make a life out of, make a career out of, make money off of, or do something because it serves a bigger purpose or has maybe a bigger social motivation or intrinsic motivation or whatever it may be, right?
Hmm.
It could just be just because you like doing it.
Hmm.
But a lot like you said, I've always been great at talking to people, talking in front of crowds, being a leader, using my voice, speaking up, like speak up. I've gotten in trouble for my mouth before. It's gotten me in trouble at work because I'll state my views. I'll go against the grain. I don't always go with it, whatever what I'm supposed to be going with, whatever. So that's just a blessing and a curse, but it's a blessing that I was
Yeah.
blessed with to be able to do. So and like I said, it doesn't always have to be that thing, but it can be more than that, and you can just play into what you're already good at. If you're good at just talking and rambling and but again, please take the advice from episode 160 something with Shay. We talked about this a little bit. If someone tells you to start a podcast, ask them if they're going to be your producer. Ask them if they're going to do the editing for you. Ask them if they're going to
Yeah.
provide you with equipment and time and everything to alleviate that. Because if the answer is no, then maybe try to find a podcast that you can be a co-host on, become a guest, things like that, and do those different things. Um, Starting a
Hmm.
podcast is fun, but running it for 170, 180 episodes uh, gets harder and harder after time, and it
Oh yeah.
can it can be a time suck. It's a great time suck. It's one I really enjoy, but it can definitely take take away from certain things or other places. So definitely something to be mindful of. But wanted to jump in here just to some statistics that I found about music and people here, and then to share them with the audience, and then get your thoughts on any and all of these that you feel are relevant or really stick out to you. So the first one here is music and emotional response. A study by Jocelyn and Sloboda from 2010 found that 90% of people use music to alter their mood, relieve stress, and enhance their well-being. I feel like that one's pretty straightforward, pretty obvious. Would like to think that one's true because music does that to our minds, right? It gets us to feel a certain way, it gives us an emotional response. Some music gives us a physical response. I know that, I know that very well by using the Podbeat app. There's different music that I use, whether I'm on the elliptical or whether I'm trying to lift weights. I'll change the beat and the overlay kind of thing. And so it really depends on what I'm doing, what I'm listening to, different types of tones and whatnot, even with audiobooks. Some audiobook puts you to sleep, some really get you going and excited, just kind of depending on who's reading and whatnot. So that's a big part of it there. Any thoughts on that one?
No, 100% agree. Like you can, I use music all the time to get pumped up or wind down or get more focused or calmer. Definitely has that effect on adults, certainly has that effect on children as well. So definitely agree with that one.
100%. And then the next one, music and mental health. So according to an American Music Therapy Association study, this was from, I don't know what year, but it's an American Music Therapy Association study. 89% of individuals receiving music therapy reported significant emotional improvements, and 83% found that music helped them manage anxiety. And so that one, again, another one that makes perfect sense, because if we can use music and we can use it to our benefit, and we can use it for when we're feeling anxious or nervous or on edge, or maybe when we're angry, or maybe when we're sad, to help us work through those different emotions. There's a song out there for every song, for every situation, for every emotion, and it can really help process through a lot of those things that maybe we don't have the words or language to do so, but maybe this song does. And so it can be really powerful, a very powerful outlet to help with our mental health as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's music, that can impact our psychology in a lot of ways. Like one, just simply it gets us out of our own heads. If we're tending to the music, we're listening to it actively, we're appreciating it, we're less likely to be flooded with, those anxious thoughts or worries, and we can just enjoy the experience.
100%. And I got two more here. So third one here is creativity. No, I'm going to go to this one first and then go back to that one. Music and social connection. A 2021 survey by Spotify revealed that 63% of listeners reported feeling more connected to others when engaging with shared playlists or music events, including music's role in fostering community, which, again, another one that makes a bunch of sense. When we find someone that likes the same kind of music as us, or relates to the same music, or enjoys the same music as us, there's almost a connection there, because you kind of understand a little bit about how that person thinks, how they feel a lot of the time. Music's a pretty big indicator of our mood. So if you tell someone, "Oh, I'm listening to this song," and they know that's a sad song, then it kind of goes without saying, "Oh, I'm feeling a little bit sad, a little bit down." So it helps us connect with each other socially, which is huge, because since COVID and even before that, our society has had a really hard time with social connection. So
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And like, if for even greater connection, if you're making music with somebody else, I think that's an even deeper connection than sharing playlists or listening, which can be very deep and emotional and very special itself. But like some of the highest connections I've experienced are just like those really special moments. It's like when me and my buddies were just jamming and making up songs and playing off each other and improvising and creating things out of nowhere, and just like it's just connecting in a very creative level that is very unique and important. Like music can definitely be a conduit for connection in a lot of ways.
100%. Okay, so the last one here will lead me into the next point I wanted to get into with you. So it's a creativity and cognitive enhancement. So research from the National Endowment for the Arts indicates that students engaged in arts programs score 20% higher on standardized tests, which are bullshit as in themselves. Just gonna throw that out there, compared to those who do not participate in creative activities. And so there's something to being involved in arts, in music, and something that's huge for our society that is very quickly dying. I don't even want to say it's slowly dying, because it's literally becoming extinct. To find a good arts program, to find any kind of arts program within schools, whether that's music or drawing or art class or
Hmm.
drama club or anything like that. That is an artsy fartsy kind of thing that is up kids' alleys that they need for their development,
Yep.
because it can help with processing. It helps with, gosh, it helps with everything. Being
Hmm.
in arts, like I remember I did sports in high school and I also did acting in high school. And I loved acting more than I loved sports. I love sports.
Yeah.
I was good at sports. I enjoyed going to practice. I enjoyed playing baseball. I enjoyed playing basketball. Those are things I really enjoyed. But there was just something about theater. There was something about musicals
Yeah.
that just really, really kept me going. The friends I made there were way better friends than I made
Yeah.
through sports. People I was way closer and deeper connected to, and to this day I still don't understand why, but it was way easier to connect with them. Even back going to 8th grade when I was in my very first drama club and whatnot, the people, I'm still connected to some of them on Facebook. I'll still see them from time to
Hmm.
time. I'll be like, man, I remember like very clear memories of interacting with them on stage and the tears that we cried together after performing these musicals and doing these plays and things like that. And so it's just some great memories that live rent free in my head, and I'm so glad that they do, because of
Nice.
it.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of research on music. You know, music is, I think, is really interesting because it's mathematical in one point, right? Like there's time signatures, there's syncopations, there's beats, there's phrasing, there's mathematical patterns, there's the chords are mathematical relationships. And so, like progressions and time signatures and rests, and it's very mathematical. So yeah, that's activating kind of those mathematical concepts and building blocks. Then at the other end, it's very just about language and linguistics and story and narrative. And so you have that, which would theoretically boost kids reading and English comprehensive and storytelling thinking, and like this happens and then this is probably going to happen next, right? And then you just have like the emotion of it, right? Like the socio emotional aspect of it, where you can tell if it's a sad song, a happy song, a heck yeah, let's get pumped up song, angry song. Like you can tell right away. So music, I think, is just a very special medium that can really introduce kids to these different complex concepts all at once. And yeah, if they're involved in listening to music, that's helpful. If they're involved in playing it or making it in some way, that's really powerful as well. But like, yeah, the arts in general, I think, are really important for children's development. Just getting them exposed to these different things where creativity is an expression and emotions and empathy and collaboration, right? Like, if you're talking about theater and or any creative endeavor, like there's so
Mhm.
many valuable skills that kids can learn from these creative endeavors, these creative activities, whether it's music, theater, you know, building
Yeah.
things, crafts, art, whatever. Like there's so much that they can get from it. And like sports are great too. Like my son's in a lot of sports. He loves it. I love sports growing up too. But like, yeah, there's sports are a little bit more black and white and objective, right? Like
Mhm.
whoever gets the most points wins. There's certain rules that you're, operating in, and those never change. But with music or theater, or art, writing, like you don't have as many constraints, and you can
Mhm.
express yourself and connect differently and collaborate and interact with people differently and like really unique ways. So that's yeah, I like that stat you were sharing and just the story about your own experiences. I think that's really nails it on the head.
Yeah, and I think there's a big difference between arts and sports, right? Like arts, like you said, really help you take those limits off the expression and whatnot. But with sports, it helps you find the nuance and the details and the very little things that you can do to make a difference, right?
Hmm.
It can really stretch your mind in that way. Like I love things about this all the time. Like if you're playing basketball and you dribble to the left and your defender's sending to the left, and then so you're gonna get blocked, and so you have to pay attention to very little things about your
Yeah.
defender, right?
Mm.
which way are their hips shifted? Are their feet squared up when you're going to shoot? Where are you lined up? Where are your eyes looking? How high are you jumping? How hard are you flicking the wrist? All those different things, right? Like they're all very nuanced details, little thing. Baseball, especially, like baseball, there's so much nuance. There's so much like detailed things. There's so much beauty that comes from these games. I could go on and on about this subject.
Yeah, I love that.
But with baseball, there's, if you have a certain hitter up, you have to be a certain place. I played first base and I pitched. And so very detailed, very little things. If I threw a pitch wrong or missed in just the wrong spot, that ball could be out of the park. So it's literally a game of centimeters and inches.
Yeah.
And listening to your body and knowing your body and being ready to react and being able to try to proactively react to situations. So there's a lot of timing and different nuance and things like that are similar to the arts, but are very isolated sports as well. And of course, in both environments, you get to work collaboratively with the team, you get to work with other people, and there's a big social benefit of it. And so I think between what you said and those, we hit on the 6 big effects that I really wanted to hit on, the effects of music and creative outlets for kids. There's emotional regulation, cognitive benefits, stress reduction, improved social connections, enhanced self-esteem and confidence, and then therapeutic effects as well. There's a lot that can come. All 6 of these are different areas that are big effects and beneficiaries of the profound psychological impact on individuals, which offers them these are some of the numerous cognitive, emotional, and social benefits that come with music and creative outlets. But I wanted to ask for you in particular, what is the reasoning and the thought process behind for you producing an album for kids each year?
Yeah, it's it's fun, and I think it's a fun, creative way to document our family and our experiences together, especially my son growing up through his developmental phases year to year, and they're all very hilarious and and specific, and there's really funny moments in each one of those. So it's a fun way just to document that and have like a legacy, a record of that. They're always going to exist, right? Like he's going to be able to listen to that when he's a dad with his kids, or when he's a grandfather with his grandkids, right? And they could live on forever, and who knows what's going to happen with them all. So that idea is very motivating for me. Doing it each year, like it was a personal challenge for me. Like I started off small, like I had that spark, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it for his first year. I'm going to do 5 songs, and then if I like it, I'm going to do it again. And so like as I was doing it right away, I was like, oh yeah, this is good, this is fun, this is special, I'm feeling this, and I think I can have an original perspective on this. And so like I wanted to make that commitment and that challenge, like I'm doing this, like whether life's busy or chaotic or whatever's going on, like I'm doing this, like I'm going to find a way to do it, I'm going to commit to it, I'm going to make it happen until he gets old enough to say, Dad, you're embarrassing me, stop writing songs about me. My girlfriend's here, like stop. Whatever. So like
write the songs about both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So like it was a commitment that energized me and provided focus. Like I know like I'm gonna do it. And sometimes, like after I write a batch of songs or I'm done, like what am I gonna do next? Like, oh shoot, like what's on the docket? And I have to get creative. I have to come up with something, and it just helps me stay consistent and focused and productive, and just it's a positive challenge that I wanted to commit to for my own learning and growing and creativity and output and legacy. And what I try to do also, like each song I'm producing, I'm trying to do something a little bit different or new each time. So kind of embedded learning into it. So I might try a new technique, I might try a new tool that I have to learn. I may like enlist like a different musician to help me with like bass or saxophone or keys or pedal steel. Like I'm always trying to do something a little new or different that I haven't done before. So I'm always learning and getting better as well. And so that's very motivating. It's energizing. It builds a lot of creative confidence to take a concept and move it all the way to a complete product, and it's finished and it's out there. That skill, just knowing you can take nothing and make it into something, and get through that process and all the obstacles that come with that. I think that translates well over into just general creative confidence and into other projects and work I'm doing. And yeah, I just wanted to do that. I wanted to be something fun for me and my son. Like as he gets older, he's appearing more on the songs and helping me with them. And it's a fun thing for me and him to do and bond over, to get him in this room on this mic, on this keyboard, or just having fun, and we're just being silly and goofy. So it strengthens our relationship as well.
I love that. And that's Hendrix, right?
Yep, Hendrix.
Very cool. Any reasoning behind the name Hendrix? I'm sure one can get one can.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my wife actually suggested it, and I said, hell yeah, that's perfect. But yeah, my favorite guitar player, musician of all time is Jimi Hendrix. I just think he's one of the epitomes of innovation and creativity and authenticity. And like, he was such an inspiration to me growing up as a guitar player and musician. And just, yeah, he just embodies that creativity and innovation. And, I think my son Hendrix has a lot of that creative personality and innovation. Like, I want my son to be an innovator, right? Like a creator, right? Like he's, every parent says their kid's special, and each kid is special and unique and creative in their own way. And but like, I just I view him as, and I want to help him be as creative as he can be, and be as innovative, and be as fulfilled and successful and engaged with whatever he ends up doing in his life, whether it's music or whatever. I just think it's just a strong, like, creative representative name. Like, it just embodies that little innovator that I hope he just kind of keeps nurturing.
I love that. And does he play any instruments?
Yeah, we got him a little Loog guitar, which is really fun for little kids. He's got a little drum set in the garage.
Very cool.
He's always playing on this little keyboard synth thing I have. He loves singing, and like, when he was young, he loved watching videos of Mick Jagger.
Heck
It was
yeah.
just really funny. He just loved watching Mick Jagger just losing his shit, just singing and ripping his shirt off and going wild.
Let's go.
It was just so funny. Like, he gravitated towards that, and just a lot of other musical, great bands and music as well. But yeah, he loves it all. He loves dancing around and just listening to beats, and he loves classical music, jazz, whatever. Like, he loves it all. But he's very musically oriented, so it's a lot of fun for me being a musical.
Very cool. Yeah, my daughters love to sing, and I got one of my daughters. Which one did I get it for? I don't remember. But at Walmart, they have these little, like, one-string guitars.
Yeah.
But they come with, like, little, like, songbooks, and on the, what is that? The neck of the, what's that? I don't know music or guitars, but the neck of the guitar, it has, like, different dots and stuff for them to place their fingers on certain numbers, and then they strum as they, like, look at so they learn how to read the sheet music while also moving their fingers while also strumming. So it's like the math and numbers. It's a really cool little guitar. It's like $20.
Awesome. Wow,
it's awesome. It's
really cool. Yeah, that sounds great.
They're awesome. And then I wanted to ask you, have you heard the conspiracy theory? I'm not sure if it's a conspiracy theory or whatnot, but of the Morgan Freeman and the Jimi Hendrix conspiracy?
No, actually, I haven't.
Okay, so what had happened here was that, so basically, Morgan Freeman is Jimi Hendrix. They're born in the same place. They're same age, both African American. They look extremely similar, right? They're doppelgangers. And so what happened was Jimi Hendrix was tired of his fame. He was tired of doing all the things, and he just wanted to live a normal, average life. So he pretty much swapped identities with Morgan Freeman to become just this normal, average guy. That's kind of where he suddenly disappeared, and he died, right?
Yeah.
And then when Jimi Hendrix was dead, Morgan Freeman was born. And so he was able to take on this new persona of the actor, this voice person. And if you see him play guitar and you see him hold a guitar and the way they strum and do these things, it's eerily similar. It's crazy. You'll have to YouTube, go down this go down this rabbit hole. But yeah, it's
I'm gonna check
this
that
whole
out.
thing to where Morgan Freeman, Jimi Hendrix, same person, just he traded in his identity of Jimi Hendrix for this Morgan Freeman and gave him a bunch of money so that he could fall off for a bit and then reinvent himself and come back as Morgan Freeman. So
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I never heard about that. I'm gonna explore that. But yeah, if anyone was gonna reinvent himself and kind of disappear, Jimi Hendrix would. Like he definitely, had some qualms about the fame and just being limited and playing the same songs over again. He wanted to do very different stuff on his different albums and tried a lot of different avenues that he never tried before and get into weirder, more eclectic stuff than what he became famous for. So yeah, if anyone was gonna do that, Jimi Hendrix probably would be the one to do that. I'm gonna check that out. That's really funny.
Yeah, hence how, and Morgan Freeman didn't start in anything until after Jimi Hendrix's death, alleged death. So it's a whole thing that he paid this. It's a really cool conspiracy. The things that TikTok teaches you. But let's get into wrap this thing up. So to wrap this thing up, I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsors of the podcast, Forefathers Apparel. They're absolutely fantastic. I can't thank Forefathers enough for all their love and support over the years of the podcast. Forefathers Apparel, literally changing the game for dads and dad apparel. Their polos are fun, they're bright. They have this awesome one that you personally, Jeff, would love. It's the music one, and it has a dark blue polo, but it has all these like different like music notes and things on it. It's super fun, super fantastic. Legit, every time I wear it, someone says something to me about it, how cool this polo is. So it's great, it's fantastic. That's Forefathers, FOREFATHERS. .com, and then you go to checkout, use the code YoungDad, that's YOUNGDAD, save 20%. Also, additionally, want to shout out the June app. June app is great for if you have kids that struggle with behavior management and whatnot. You can try June for free with your kids. The link in the description of this episode. And then also, last but not least, become a patron on Patreon. Great way to support the podcast legitimately for $1 a month. Legit for $1 a month. That's all I'm charging. That's all I'm asking. I just want you to be involved, get early access to every episode, get early access to everything we do, exclusive Q&As, all that fun stuff, and just a great chance to interact with me and everything I'm doing here on the Young Dad podcast and with the additions to it as well. So can't talk about Patreon enough. You can get a $1 a month tier or a $2 a month tier. I have yet to figure out how you do an annual tier, so we'll get around to that. But that's where we're at right now. So those are the best ways to support the podcast. Additionally, you can also support the podcast by supporting Dad Bod Apparel as well. The Dad Bod Apparel, great for hats. Support your local girl dad, which you see me wear on the podcast plenty of times in the past as well. So that's enough of all the closing business here. So I just have 5 super simple questions for you. Well, 4 simple ones, 5. The 5th one's not as simple, but we're going to do the 4 easy ones first. Would you prefer an indoor concert venue or an outdoor concert venue?
I like indoor concert venues. I just like the special acoustics. I mean, they're both great, but some of my favorite concerts, they've all been indoor. Whether it's like an intimate setting, one of my favorite guitar player, singer, songwriter guys, Raul Midon, or just seeing like an awesome production at the LA Forum. I prefer indoor ones.
Makes sense. I'm trying to think of the different ones I've been to. I would probably say indoor. I think as well. Miss Rachel or Blippy?
Blippy. Definitely
Thank
Blippy.
you. Okay, perfect. We agree there. What is your personal favorite genre of music? If you only could listen to one genre of music for the rest of your life, what are you taking?
Oh man, that's tough. The stuff I like is usually like a fusion of different things. But if I had to just listen to one, I think some of the most creative stuff is more hip hop oriented, like the ones that are really doing a good job of fusing rock and funk and pop and hip hop. Like the producers and the people at the top of their game in that space, I think, are always kind of pushing the boundaries of creativity and trying new things and experimenting and integrating different styles in unique ways. So if only one style, it'd probably be that.
Okay. So I'm going to ditch my next question to ask you another question. Who's on your Mount Rushmore of hip hop artists?
Yeah, I love Kendrick Lamar, love Jay-Z's stuff.
Okay.
Run the Jewels, that was probably my top. I just love the energy and the creativity. And
Who's your fourth on Mount Rushmore?
fourth, oh man, let's see. I don't I don't know. I'd stick with those guys
Okay.
for just straight hip hop. But there's a lot of, one of my buddies from Dallas is doing a lot of good stuff. His name's Jay Rhodes. He's a producer, play guitar with a lot on some of his tracks. He's doing some really cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of cool stuff. There's a guy named I think Amine. Maybe I haven't heard him for a while, but he popped up on my Spotify yesterday. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this guy. But I
Right.
think he's from Portland
cool.
or somewhere out there. But yeah, I just like the genre in general and just the producers and the creativity behind it.
I love that. I would probably go in no particular order. I would go Kendrick, Lil Wayne, and probably Tupac.
Oh, nice.
Tupac and or Biggie. I'm like torn on that fourth one, but
Yeah.
my top three for sure are Wayne, Kendrick in that order.
Nice.
No one does it better than Eminem.
Oh yeah.
These five that I just mentioned, Kendrick, and Wayne, Tupac, Biggie, there's no other five individuals, no one in politics, no one in law, no doctors, the quote unquote smartest people on the land. None of them have a better grasp on the English language than those five.
For sure.
And you can add in other top tier rappers of all time. No scholar has a better grasp on the English language, knows more about the English language, has read more books, has read more comics, had read more just material, more words than these men like in this field. No one. They're the greatest to ever do it. And they have the best grasp on the English language. And you cannot convince me otherwise. I'm sorry.
100%.
I don't see Steve Jobs. I don't see Steve Jobs rapping. I don't see Zuckerberg. I don't see Elon doing it. I'm just saying, I don't see these guys rapping. I know they're highly intelligent, but I don't see them rapping.
100% agree.
But all right, so last question here that we'll wrap up on is, let's say a young father comes to you. Let's say he's about 18 to 23 years old or so, right? Super young, just had his first kid. He's coming to you. He has no clue what to expect, no anything. He can't even get the words out. You can just see he's nervous, he's anxious, he's panicked, all the things. What is one or two pieces of advice that you would give to him?
Yeah, so the first piece of advice is you got this, you can figure it out. No one's ready. Even if you read 1,000 dad books or parenting books, when that moment happens, it's just like, what the heck's going on? But you figure it out. You approach it with a growth mindset. You learn, you evolve, you experiment, you stay creative, and you stay attentive, right? Like if you're present, if you're paying attention, and you're curious and open to learning and getting better, and you're committed to that, like you're gonna figure it all out. You got this. You can handle it. Second thing might be make sure you give an extra support to the new mom. You're freaked out, but she's experiencing 10 times more stuff than you are. Get some extra support to her. Help her out as much as you can. Go above and beyond in the support you give to her. Let her get some extra sleep if you can. But be there as a strong partner as well. And together, like, you guys can figure it out. You guys are going to be great. And your kid's going to be unique and special, different from any other kid. And like, your job is just to show up and pay attention and do your best and get better over time. So you got that. So there's just those two things there. And third thing maybe I'll just add is, like, don't lose yourself. Like, as you're, that creativity, you may have to kind of put it to the side, especially those first few months or first year, but don't let it die out. Keep kindling it, keep exploring it, keep journaling, keep reflecting on what that spark could become. And then when the time is right, lean into that, like follow your spark, lean into that creativity of yours for yourself as a dad, so it re-energizes you and helps you feel fulfilled and be the best person you are, so you can show up as your best version, but also so you can show up as that creative role model that your kid needs you to be, and so they can see that creativity is important. You're doing it as a dad. They want to do it their way. They're growing up building these skills and living, a positive, healthy, successful, fulfilling life along the way.
I love that, man. I love that. I couldn't agree with all that more. Let's see. Last thing here, very last thing I'll ask you to do is go ahead and tell the people where they can keep up with you, where they can find your work, and all these things about you.
Yeah. So I'd love for you guys to check out my music. I create kids music under the name Mr. Boodaddy. I'll leave a Spotify and Apple Music link for that. If you're interested in more tips on how to ignite the creativity in your young kids, I'll leave an article link to a Medium piece I wrote that has some scientifically backed advice on how to foster that creativity and develop and nurture your kids' creative strengths. And then lastly, if you are a dad and you have some kind of spark, or maybe you want to have some kind of spark, but you're not sure what it is, I'll leave a link to a free guide I have called Bigger, Better, Bolder. It's about kind of exploring your authentic motivations, what kind of impact you want to make. It's helping you refine your vision and your goals and what you want to create in life. And there's also a section on there on very tactical productivity tips on how to stay consistent, how to build habits, how to keep moving forward, how to actually turn your idea into something that's implemented in the world and out there. So I'll leave a link to that free guide as well if you're interested in exploring your own creativity as a
Definitely, man. Well, Jeff, this has been great. This has been a great conversation. It's been great to dive into creativity, to dive into music, to dive into some psychology, to dive into some conspiracy as well.
yeah.
It's always fun when we get to talk about conspiracy on the podcast. And so I appreciate you coming on tonight. I appreciate your time. Just a final reminder to our listeners to go ahead and jump into the description of this episode, whether on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, wherever you listen and or watch your podcast. People watch podcasts now, which is really weird to me because I just don't get it. But it's fine. Everything's fine. Make sure you check out all of the things that Jeff has, his different pieces, his work, all the things. Support him, support his music. While additionally, head over to Patreon and join and become a patron for just $8 today. That'll be $1 a month. You will not notice $1 come out of your bank account. I promise. You won't miss it. It's okay. But we'd love your support. We'd love your support that way. Or maybe it's $2, whatever you're going to support. Or just, go on, leave 5 stars, subscribe, follow on social medias. And you can find me on all the social medias at Young Dad Pod. You'll see the additions of the podcast there as well with Patriarchy Principles, Biracial Broadcast, and all the things that we're doing over at YDP. So until next time, we'll catch you right here back on the podcast.